Hello and welcome to another edition of Conversations of the Heart. As always, it's your boy T Till. We have a very special guest in the building, Brianna Barrasso. She is native Arizonian, mother of one, hummingbird enthusiast, and a business owner, entrepreneur with Humming Body, which we will get into in just a little bit. But she is a licensed therapist and an integrative somatic practitioner, and she specializes in trauma and boundary coaching, which is so important. Boundaries, and she utilizes mind-body practices to help her clients achieve healing and balance. And she's lived through many difficulties herself, and that's what makes Brianna dedicated to guiding others on their journey. And she is a lover of expressive arts, culture, and she is a lifelong learner. So Brianna, welcome to the show. Thank you for doing this. And as we continue on this series on postpartum, thank you for doing it. So, but before we get into those things, for the people who don't know you, introduce yourself, tell them a little bit more about yourself, and we'll get started.
You gave a excellent, very thorough introduction. So yes, I have experienced postpartum and other types of depression. I am a new business owner, yes, native, graduate of Arizona State University and Aura Institute. And yeah, when I came across this, I was so excited. I'm not sure if I have a lot of stories, a lot of things that I've lived and thrived through.
Mhm.
um, but not my postpartum story. And so it was really interesting working up to this to really kind of look at that, navigate that. But anyway, I do have a cat. I'm also a foster cat rescue mom on the side, stick kittens, and
Wow.
also neighborhood mom. So I have my daughter just part time. So other kids in the neighborhood kind of tend to come to me a little bit with, like, of
Mhm.
course, with boundaries. Um, and Uh, I also am a believer. I think it's important to say throughout all my trials that, you know, something bigger and greater has helped me through it all.
Wonderful, wonderful. I appreciate that. And it's important for like the neighborhood moms too. I remember growing up, I had a couple of neighborhood moms myself. Of course, I had my mom, but some of the neighborhood moms were so cool and gracious. And so it's always good to have those other outlets of adulthood and things like that. So that's really amazing. So touched on it a little bit. You know, um, I sent out a message, in a group about postpartum and about me doing this series, postpartum, and you jumped right in and you said, "Yeah, I want to talk about this," and I appreciate that because it is something that should be highlighted, um, and everybody has different stories and variations of what postpartum was for them, right? So sharing different perspectives from all different sides, right? Some have postpartum, it hits hard, some maybe not so much, and everything in between, right? So thank you for your vulnerability in advance. And let's dive in. So I know you've had a bout of postpartum depression. And I've heard that women kind of it can hit them at different times. So when did you really know that you were experiencing postpartum?
Well, so I got two answers to that. One would be I've had depression off and on in my life.
Mhm.
So I was preparing. I was prepared and it still hit. There's a lot of things which we can get into, but I knew when I saw that I wasn't having a lot of pressure, um, support from my at that time partner, father. Like, oh no, I'm kind of getting to a danger zone here. Like, I need more support. But also, I had the thought after I had her, I was like, man, this is a rough, tough world. Why did I choose to bring someone else into this? I am bringing her into hardship. And I mean, it was just kind of dark. I never thought about taking my own life or her life, but I had
Mhm.
thoughts like, why did I do this to her? I brought her
Mhm.
horrible, horrible mess. And that made me really depressed.
Mm.
how to navigate that moving forward for a little while.
Wow. And that's a tough thing to think about, right? I think when because most people paint this picture of motherhood and parenthood, right? That when the baby comes, it's just feels like Disney, right? And for some that might be, right? But for a lot of other people, right, there's other thoughts, like what you said. And because of the world that we're living in, we know the world that we're living in and all the crazy things that's going on here. Um, your thoughts were like, oh my gosh, what happened? What did I do? Right.
Right.
And
And
yeah.
everything have been through personally, and then how do I, and my cat wants to be on the show. um, Everything that I'd been through, I'm like, how I felt so much pressure to properly prepare and keep this child safe. And I felt so overwhelmed. Like, how am I going to do this? But it does take a village. And there's lots of different ways to do that. A lot of resources out there.
Hmm.
Um, Very resourceful. There's absolute, that's a strength of mine is I never give up and I can always find some kind of resource, whether it's for myself or someone else. Always something out there.
Right. And everyone's different in terms of how long postpartum lasts. And I was shocked to, find some people were just coming out of it after about 7 years or 6 years and everyone's different. How long did your postpartum depression last?
So I'm still trying to figure that out 12 years later.
Wow.
Because the relationship I was in and the way I was brought up, I experienced a lot of gaslighting. And because having a family members that had maybe had some narcissistic traits, and then also my partner, I did not know at the time, had narcissistic traits. And so my reality, it was told, no, you're experiencing this right now. And I'd be like, but it was so convincing.
Mm.
So my postpartum, I mean, I thought it lasted because I don't know what textbook says a few months, but really it probably did go on for years. And what was really focused on was my behavior. It was like, let's focus on the behaviors and these habits and these things you're doing wrong or these thoughts that are kind of not normal. But I never once heard postpartum, but like a couple times. In which
Mm.
case, I went to some postpartum support groups right away. But there was only like one at hospital that wasn't close to me, and there just wasn't a lot of resources. So
Mm.
everyone was just focused on like what was wrong with me, but not what was going on. Maybe the
Wow.
lack of support relationship or the fact I hadn't spoken to my family for years. And
Mm.
I mean, just so many things, but we can.
Yeah. Um, so when it comes to support, right? Um, because like you said, you've dealt with depression before. So a lot of the things that you were preparing for, you were being proactive versus reactive, right? Which is sometimes what we do is we wait and then we're reactive, right? But you're very aware, right? You're a therapist, you're aware of things that could happen. So you have your tools in your tool belt, right? And it's still it. Um, And so when it comes to the support piece, right? So you can do everything as an individual yourself to prepare yourself for, things that could happen. But how important would you say, right, is support of your friends and family? Um, you know, even, you had a different partner, whatever the case is, that wasn't supportive, but it does take a village. It takes a village to raise a child, right? But I think it also takes a village to get through life in general. Um, And so, how important, right? I want you to kind of speak to people, right? And say, listen, if you have friends, family who's about to give birth, right? How important is support? Like, what advice could you give them on how to be a support to this person that they need to support, right? What would you say?
Wow, that's such a big question. I think support is so key because I think I found myself feeling so isolated and alone due to many different things. But um, it's so important, but boundaries with support is important too.
Mm,
What types of people am I trying to get support from? Are they capable? Am I putting all my eggs in one basket, expecting one person can be my be all?
mhm,
Um, are these people that I need to talk to and getting support from, are they safe? Are they going to keep my confidence? There can be retaliation or consequences to any of those things. So really
mm,
finding someone that you can really say how you really feel without judgment, without consequence.
mm.
Because it can be pretty scary. I mean, legal things can happen in custody and I mean, there's so many things. It's so important. And so, I mean, I went to professionals. I got a counselor. I saw a psychiatrist. Um, I saw a doula. I went to like a Buddhist healing session at the time. I was like trying to exercise with certain people. I had so many friends that were pregnant at the same time too. So we were trying to be support for each other.
Mhm,
Um, but they were the ones that were like, I love my baby so much. And I was like, I do too, but it was fake. It was like a culture.
mhm,
Um, and I don't really want to say it's fake because who am I to judge? It could have been my postpartum, right? Um, I loved my daughter. She was actually my miracle baby. I was told I
mm.
wasn't able to have children, um, and got pregnant. So it was a very, very, very special thing, and she's still the light of my life today for sure. So
Wow.
support is so key. I mean, I support groups, journaling. I had my placenta encapsulated. Um, have you heard about that?
No, no, I have
I
not.
can share.
Please share.
Okay, so I did a lot of research and prep about, because I was on an antidepressant. I had to get off of it during pregnancy. It's like, what can I do that's like natural? So one of the things I did was I got a henna blessing. So I had this big belly of me and my girlfriend, and someone did a henna design on each belly for like a blessing and a prayer to make
Mhm,
it like a sacred ceremonial thing. But then what I also did with the placenta was is right after I had my child, two girlfriends took it on ice. Sorry to be so
yeah.
whatever. Um, they took it on ice, took it to the doula. The doula dehydrated it and then put it into capsules. And so I took that 3 times a day. It's actually people have been doing it for years and years. It's a really ancient practice. Not that ancient, but
Right.
took it 3 times a day, and I thought it would help. It really didn't. Um, and then of course it goes on into breastfeeding and things like that, which we can get.
Wow.
That's what I tried. That's one thing that I did to really try to prepare, thinking that that could be equivalent to an antidepressant.
Got it. Um, and so you you're going through this postpartum, you're having these thoughts, right? Um, how did you navigate that, like each and every day? Because that's kind of heavy thoughts to have, right? That why did I do this, right? And actively loving your child and actively trying to figure out your thoughts and trying to figure out your process, right? How did you navigate that each and every day? That's hard. That had to be hard.
It was a struggle. I actually had a pregnancy journal, and then I also had a journal afterward as well. I made sure I tended to my spiritual needs, although what I was hearing was, I'll just say, like, not of God. It wasn't positive. It was the negative mind. It was the negative thoughts. I
Hmm.
thought it was me. Depending on your belief system, that was not me. It was not it was negative thinking.
Hmm.
Um, but I still really, really tried. I joined a church at the time, um, got a counselor, and I mean, I really tried to do everything I could. I also joined a support group that met like once a week. None of them had postpartum. It was for like something else. I had some like body image and some food issues also,
Hmm.
and so I was going to support groups, but it wasn't addressing the depression.
Right.
Like I said, it was like behavior, which is great. That's one way to do things.
Hmm.
But it wasn't addressing the real issue. And so I just believed what everyone else was telling me that I had, this problem. And it was like, oh, this is like real depression here.
Wow. Um, I know you're touching on church and faith. depending on belief systems. I know you said that was something that was important to you during this time. Um, I'm gonna guess believe in Christ. Is that what you mean, or did you believe in
Yeah, I mean,
church?
Christian Jesus, church, but I
Hmm.
tried so many different paths and avenues.
Hmm.
Um, Everyone has different needs,
Hmm.
culture, and ways that they've grown up. So
Yeah.
it's going to work differently for everybody. So I'm definitely supportive of anyone just being a seeker.
Hmm. Absolutely. But in your own personal journey, um, how did your faith in kind of help you, or if it did, I'm not going to guess for you, but or how did that affect your journey with postpartum and you navigating those waters?
So I mean, for a while, it was my relationship was not cursing at God, but like, why? Why is this happening? Why are you putting me in this situation?
Hmm.
Just kind of the blame game. But I mean, really, then honestly, like my faith gave me a new life, a new experience, a new perspective, gave me
Hmm. Hmm.
so much freedom. Instead of relying on people and thinking they should meet my needs or they, toxic this, toxic that, or I had trauma growing up that, um, having faith and really like, I mean, when you're thinking about death or questioning why you brought someone into this world, I mean, that's when God comes in. I mean, the only way is up from there. I mean, when
Hmm.
you're right there, I think most people do start questioning or saying something to something
Very, very
out
true.
there in the universe or right here next to us, however people see.
Right. So, as you're navigating these, I wouldn't say waters because sometimes it's heavy, and sometimes they're shallow and they're deep ends of this thing. And you mentioned support, and you also mentioned, the lack of support, right? And I'm not going to get into right your personal relationships, with your partner. But what I will ask is, can you speak to the gentleman out there, um,
Yeah, yeah.
and kind of from your perspective, tell them why their support is needed during this time.
Okay. So I think it's so important, and I'm sure there's a lot of pressure because I feel like I was looking to my partner for a lot. Um, I mean, but I was just feeling really isolated, and so um, like don't be jealous if like baby wants mom. Like it's so normal. Those first few months, it's so normal, like for mom. But do the body wearing with mom, like that skin to skin, or like I had I forget what they're called, baby something. Anyway, you wrap them, walk around with them. And my
Mhm.
partner at the time did a little bit of that, and I think it helped us bond because he was like, "Oh, now I see like how you feel," and we just want to be like seen and heard too. And like I was tired. I was so tired. And I won't list like, my laundry list of like complaints. But he did do some things. Like he didn't like cats. He scoops the litter for many months. Hated cats. And so that's like not good for when you're pregnant or have a new baby. Try to do things around the house to make things like easier. So, for example, I did cloth diapers for a few months. He installed the diaper sprayer on the toilet. Or I had not had a haircut in a long time. He paid for me to go get it was like a chemical free hair color and cut. Like it was like some organic place. It was really cool.
Mhm.
So I mean, he did do some positive things. But really just to listen. And I don't think he had any support. So I would say get your own support. Because I just saw him check out over and over again with these video games. And then I was just alone with like a very good
Mhm.
baby, no complaints. Um, it was like he was just quiet. So if you could just talk a little bit, just a little bit, or
Mhm.
respond, or draw a bath, say, "Do you need a snack?" I mean, just put yourself out there a little bit. And I think that maybe there's just like balance of like, or this feeling of imbalance.
Hmm.
Like, well, gosh, it's all about you. Well, kind of is for a little bit, and that's okay. That's okay because it will even back out. So, I mean, even in relationships, it's kind of like, well, I'm always giving and you're always taking. There's seasons that way. And sometimes you meet in the middle, and sometimes you give more and get less, and vice versa. And this is a time that a woman or new mom just needs support, needs to know that you're there and you're going to be there. And granted, that's not true in every situation. But if it
Right.
is, let her know I'm here. I'm here for the long haul. I'm about you and this baby. Like reassure, reassure, reassure.
Hmm. I like that. Because I also like that you said, yeah, the one thing is in relationships, there's going to be seasons where you might need more, and there might be seasons that the man might need. Um, and so having that support that that person's going to be there probably means everything to you, especially during those times. And also, what you said was also true. Make sure that you get support for yourself as a man, because
Yeah.
what I didn't even know until I started doing this series was apparently, I think the statistic is 1 in 10 men experience about postpartum depression. And I didn't even know. And I said, excuse me? And right. And that's of men who actually report. But men don't report a lot of
Right,
these things.
right. No, and
Right.
not many report, and that's why they even do it at places of employment now. The men can get paternity leave. And I don't know if that's exactly why, but I
Mhm.
suspect.
Yeah, yeah. And so
It's so true
yes.
because like these men are like, what is it like to be a father? What was my father like? Sometimes, not all the time. So it's like
All
this
right.
reflection time, but you're not talking about it. It's not as acceptable. Mom has the limelight and the baby. So then what do you
Mhm.
do with all your stuff? So that's why I'm a very big proponent of like counseling support groups, find safe men that you can like really just talk. I
Yeah.
know some people like, no, we don't talk. I'm like, well, find somebody, please.
Very, very true. Because us as as men, it's sometimes hard to, for a lot of men, it's hard to communicate, it's hard to talk, it's hard to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And to admit when maybe you're going through something, and that you need support, and right. And so, but knowing that men go through postpartum and they probably don't even know that it is postpartum. I think that's something also, right? Because you don't know what you don't know. And so, uh, I really like that part, because as men, I think that we need to get into therapy a lot more often. You know,
And it can't hurt.
therapy,
It
no, oh no.
can only help. I mean, and that's I think what a lot of people don't realize.
Yeah, and I'm a man that's actively in therapy myself. Just like going to the gym, even if like it's just something you're just exercising.
Another muscle. You get
Yeah,
another muscle.
it's expanding that your mental health and expanding that muscle, right? Getting more tools in your tool belt, right, to prepare you for life, and also the release, right, that you probably need, right, when you're going through things. And men tend to bottle up things, and sometimes that can lead to health issues, and a lot of different things. Stress goes into various different types of ailments and diseases, and that's another topic for another day. But I mean, but these are things that are real, and so it's so important that try therapy. It's not a substitute for faith, right? I mean, you can have faith and have therapy, right? And I think some of the misconceptions is knowing what a psychologist, the difference between a psychologist and a therapist, right? There's stigmas with therapy, and sometimes not everybody's out to diagnose, or to medicate you. If that's something that is a need, then that's a need, right? But that sometimes that's not what therapy is for, right? So just I just wanted to put that out there so people understand, right? It's okay to get there.
Yeah, and if people have a stigma against therapy, a huge thing and why I operate more under coaching is trauma and boundary coach because if you're worried about, I don't know, being documented or people finding out or your insurance, the coach is it can almost be more I don't want to say confidential, but it's more removed from all of that. And so I try to do both, depending on what a person wants and needs.
Mhm.
But back to what you're saying about, these men, maybe therapy might be a good idea. Well, so can coaching,
Mhm.
because it's like if you don't work out even some of your own stuff or generational, or maybe you didn't have the best experience with your dad and you want to be a better dad. I mean, to even
Mhm.
talk about that, somebody, anybody, because our kids feel everything. They can sense it, they can feel it, they can see it, they can't speak to it. Their brains are not able to do that.
Well,
So to really heal your own stuff is going to make you such a better parent and break chains, and then your child can live a better life.
absolutely. And that's what we aim for, right?
Mhm.
Is to be able to break those generational curses, to break those chains, to be better, right? And I think sometimes and there's nothing wrong with this, what I'm about to say, but it's like, I was the first person in my family to graduate college and this and that, right? And I love that, and that's wonderful. But we got to be able to say, hey, listen, I was the first one in my family to break some generational curses too. That needs to be celebrated as well, because that's what holds people, right? And I don't know about you, but back in the day, it was like what happens in this house stays in this house. That
Yeah.
was a big thing, right?
Don't, don't hear, don't look. This that monkey thing. Remember, it's like this, and
Hmm.
this. That
Yeah.
was that.
Hmm. And that statement alone has put families in generational bounds
And
years,
shame.
right? And it's like, well, that statement isn't even true because if you realize it, what happens in this house that never stays in the house because your kids grow up and then they go get houses of their own.
And
And
then
then
they
they
go, what was in their house in
is
another
now
house?
right. So then now it
Funny, but
spreads, right? So it
right.
doesn't stay in the house. It goes wherever it is your kids go, and then they create kids, and then they have kids. And then that's where we have these generational issues and problems. Um, that's where a lot of times people, unfortunately, who've been sexually abused in the house or whatever the case is, they don't say, right? Because of certain things. And it's like, no, we need this. We need to say something.
And
Um,
it's like hurt people, or we can tend to repeat what we've seen and experienced, especially around trauma, whether it's big trauma, small trauma, addiction, mental health, depression. I mean, all that feeds into it. And then I think it makes people um, more susceptible to things like postpartum, to
mm,
things like depression,
mm,
to the choices you make, what kinds of relationships you get in. And then you're modeling that to your kid, which again is why I felt so much pressure when I had my child. I was just
mm,
like, oh my God, I'm not perfect. I do not have it together. And my head, the postpartum depression, just like was telling me I was not capable. Like,
mm.
anyone listening, do not listen to your head. Do not listen to your head. It's not always the truth.
Hmm. And that's very true as well. So humming body, want to get into that, as that's your entrepreneurial venture, and I know you're a hummingbird enthusiast. So kind of talk to me about those two, and how you put them together.
I
I
will.
like
I
that.
will. I get that question in there. So I've been seeing hummingbirds since I've been very young. Um, I can tell you a couple quick facts. It's the only bird that can fly backwards. It's the one thing in like the whole world that has the quickest metabolism.
Mm,
Um, they are feisty. They're territorial. They're just full of energy and life. And I mean, they just zip around. I know their chirp. I can hear them. I have hummingbird feeders. I watch them. One came up this close to me the other day, and so I purchased this little thing that I can fold out, and then it'll just be out of it right in front of me, which is amazing.
wow.
So anyway, they're very vibrational. Their energy, I take them as messenger animals for anyone that is into that kind of thing. I believe like sometimes it's even God being like, I see you. You're in the right place. I love you.
Mm,
I just
mm,
every time I see her, so I'm like, squirrel moment. Like I'm like, wait a second, stop talking.
mm,
Um, so humming body. and I created my own logo with a company. But humming body, so instead of hummingbird, humming body. So what I try to do is I try to help the mind body come together and be one. And so energetically, vibrationally, because a lot of we're always in our head. This is
Hmm.
we're always in our head, most of us, in certain parts of the brain. Well, we're not always taught about the body part. What are my sensations? What am I feeling?
Hmm.
Um, what's going on? What am I holding on to?
Hmm.
What am I acting out from? Could be pain, physical pain. Could be um, like, I mean, I'll just give a quick example. You're in a car accident, and what happens right away? You're like, ugh. I mean, it's like, frozen shock, whatever. But we get so busy, we just move on. Where where does that go?
Hmm.
No, we're all up here. So if you can reintegrate the energy and the vibrational stuff, you can release some of that trapped trauma messaging um, through the nervous system.
Hmm.
And this scientific thing with the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system um, to let them communicate, and then you're less apt to like choose certain relationships, to have chronic stress, to be in overwhelm. So humming body to me is it's huge. You want to let your body hum. You want to let it hum. You want to live the fullest life possible. And to
Hmm.
me, that's the one animal and bird for me that I see so much life.
Um, Thank you for that explanation, and it makes so much sense. Me seeing hummingbirds now around where I reside, and I'm like, I love these. I love these birds. They're awesome, and yeah, like that metabolism is, you can tell it's there. Wonderful. So, when it comes to hummingbird, all right, what kind of services do you provide?
So again, I am a licensed clinician, but I try to operate more as the trauma and boundary coach. Usually, if we're lacking some boundary, we've experienced some kind of trauma. And I don't mean you've been sexually abused, or you
Right.
could have been a car accident, you could have seen somebody get hit on a bike. I mean, just anything. But usually you don't have one without the other. And so I do some coaching there. And how I do that is I offer a little bit of sound healing. I have like singing bowls and gongs and things like that for vibrational purposes. And then also, and relaxation. But I use meditation, mindfulness, also somatic body work and biodynamic breath work. And again, that works with the nervous system and
Mm-hmm.
gets us back into our bodies, out of the mind, and to reintegrate both. So
Okay.
the services I do is all virtual unless somebody wants me to go to them in person.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually under an hour, and I kind of really try to cater it to everybody's specific needs. So I mean, there's like a 5 week thing that we learn about grounding and orienting and processing, but other times it's let's just make some goals and move forward. And what kind of tools can we get in that tool belt? And I will never have someone try to be dependent on me and my services. I am just facilitating healing. And I want to equip other people with the tools that they can go home and do it like on their own. And I think that is about empowerment, prevention. Um, Also, we'll be launching a program for prevention services with kids doing life skills and coping skills. So, like body safety, consent,
Mm-hmm.
um, feelings, mindfulness, and in after school programs or things that parents may want to do virtually in a group as well.
Oh, that's very important, especially, with kids and going, going to school and they're in various different situations and stuff like that. And, so that's really, really amazing stuff there. Um, and you do a lot of work on boundaries, right? Um, so explain to us why having boundaries is so critical though for our life.
Oh my goodness. So there's so much there. I mean, basically, if someone's like, well, what's the boundary? Because I hear people say, like, I'm making a boundary right now. Boundaries aren't demands, boundaries aren't trying to control another person. It's really just knowing where you stop and I begin. There's got to be a space. And so, a lot of times, like, what helped me a lot was I started imagining me in a bubble.
Hmm.
And I did a lot of experimenting in therapy with this. I walk around, have a bubble. I choose what comes in and out of that barrier. I mean, it can be flexible, it can be fluid, it doesn't have to be a brick wall, but you choose what comes in and what goes out. who you're interacting with.
Mm,
And it's so important to have not only external boundaries, but internal.
mm,
What am I okay with? What am I not okay with? What am I going to accept? So it's kind of like values and things like that.
mm.
But what I found is when I don't follow my own personal boundaries and I've made them, I tend to feel bad. And then I compromise more and more and more until a lot of times we don't even know what we like or who we are anymore because we're just like externally looking around. And that is the culture today, anyways. We're always looking outward. And so to really go in and be like, well, what's important to me and what do I stand for um, is super important. And especially to even model to our kids and society too.
Appreciate that explanation because boundaries, I think, you know, for us, as human beings, I think placing boundaries on not just people, but just even it could be on social media, right? I think it could be on I think it could be on anything, right? I think one of the biggest things I think that we were told when we were kids, like everything in moderation, right? Everything in moderation. Um and you could OD on a lot of different things in life. It could be, like I said, social media. I think that causes a lot of depression as well.
Oh,
Um, because you're always looking at what you see and then what you don't, right? And you're allowed, like what you said, you're allowing that in, right? You're allowing what you see in, right? And it's like, oh, I see people on vacation. I can't afford it. I see people with amazing jobs. I don't have one. Or I see people, right? See, right? You see people with their beautiful kids. I don't, and I might be going through postpartum, right? See people with a beautiful husband or wife. I don't have that, right? It's always this thing of comparison. This feels like, right, when you're viewing other people and other things, and it's like, oh, they have and I don't, right?
right.
And it's interesting.
I mean, even furthermore, with boundaries that when you compare, sometimes you're setting yourself lower and it's kind of like you're going to settle and take what you can get. And if you have boundaries and you try to follow, not try, you follow through, you're more likely to have safety in relationships, less domestic violence, less abuse,
Mm,
your voice. I mean, all those things with boundaries are so important. Um, yeah, had to add that end in there. Very important, those ones.
yeah, and I think a lot of times when you're always in a place of comparison, a lot of times, correct me if I'm wrong, but that could take away from you being grateful um, for the things that you already have and have accomplished, right? It's easy to do. Like, oh, this person has them. I have a master's degree. This person has a PhD. Man, right? Like, or something, right? To where you, you could be in a season to where you're building your entrepreneurship and you're building your business, and then you're following people who have millions of dollars or who has this and has that, and they're booming, and you're not, and you may not even know their journey. They could have mirrored your journey, right? Of going through, just trials and tribulations, building a business, and how they're successful. But all you see is the success, and then you look at where you are, right?
Right.
And it's
I
grief
Yeah.
induced.
Oh, yes. Yeah, for sure. And I've kept a gratitude journal on honestly, this is
Mhm.
that's like aged um for over 20 years.
Mm,
Specifically, like I have journals that I write in, but I have a gratitude journal specifically. And I think it's such an important attitude and state of mind, especially in the society that we live in.
mm.
Um, to really, with the comparisons and the pressure and whether you have faith or not, but really that attitude is so important to maintain a healthy mindset, stay out of depression, stay out of uh, lack, the lack mindset. And then that affects how we operate with money, with people, our choices of like others.
Mhm.
That's
And that's
great.
amazing that you've kept a gratitude journal for 20 years. And I say that because a lot of people, like, if we really audit ourselves, and that's why I say therapy sometimes removes the mask of who you think you are and it shows you who you. And because when you audit yourself, see, it's easy to audit other people, but when you audit yourself
Mhm.
and when you look at certain things, a lot of people don't even say, "Thank, I'm grateful for waking up to see a new day."
right.
Like these small things that are small things that we deem as small things are huge. Me taking a breath, me doing this podcast with you, right? It's I'm grateful for it, right? Right. It's people think it's small,
Which is so
but
hard.
yeah.
But it's hard there because, and I feel like because I didn't come up with that idea. Like it
Hmm.
was, I had a mentor and they taught that to me. But it's almost like I had to be in a dark place to even be able to feel real gratitude. So I think even though I've been like, man, I do so much and self-pity, hold on, or I have this out for a reason. Self-pity, poor me, poor me.
Ah, the violin. I like that.
I keep that out for
I'm
my
gonna have to give
personal
me one
grace.
of those.
Yeah. I'm just like, no, it's now I'm grateful for everything I've been through. It's made me who I am today. And I feel the depths of gratitude because I have been in the dark. And you may have your seasons of darkness too,
Yes.
or you wouldn't be so grateful. And I
Hmm.
think as he does too, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's such a good practice.
Yeah. I think with gratitude, it's of course it's a hard practice, right? Because we're always on to the next thing, right? It's like you wanted to open up a business, great, right? And it took you a few years to open it, and then you finally open it, and you've already moved on to okay, so what's going to be my first year, second year, third year earnings, and okay, great, right? And I understand the concept of it, right? But we're always moving on to the next thing, and with sometimes it prohibits us from just saying, man, like I just these small things, I'm grateful for because when you realize when you're in a hospital bed looking up at the ceiling and you're sick or you're whatever it is that you have going on, all that starts to come back to you now. It's like, oh, like I wish I could just be healthy again. I wish I could just take a step. I wish I could just open my eyes with no pain. Or whatever it is that you're going through, those small things that you used to take for granted comes flooding back.
Right? And
And
you
those
and
are the
you can
things you wish for.
yes, yes. And you literally can feel gratitude in your body. So we can like, write it down, be in left brain, write it down, this and that. But if you can drop in and sit in quiet and take some deep breaths and like where do I feel this in my body? And that's kind of like the somatic work that I really love. Like
Hmm.
where do I feel this? You can feel your chest maybe get warm. You can feel maybe a little lighter. Maybe you have a couple of tears. It's so important to pause in this such fast paced world.
Absolutely. Um, so everybody, please. I think that is a good practice. If you can get a gratitude journal and begin writing it. And I would even encourage it in your relationships. Um, because I think a lot of times if we do it with ourselves, I know we do it with our partners. What you used to be grateful for, you take for granted now, right? It's just a norm, right? Until God forbid you lose that person to death or whatever it is, sickness, then it's like, oh, I miss those small things, right? I should have said thank you more. I should have been better, right? And I think actively when you practice gratitude, there's a release also, right? There's grace involved too, with yourself and with others.
And I wish I could have been more grateful during postpartum, but my brain just wasn't really operating at full
Yeah.
capacity.
Well, I mean, I think when you're going, but again, when you're going through traumatic situations, right, things are different,
Yeah.
right? But when you're actively not in those positions, like if it's just every day, right, you should be great. Like you should be practicing those things, right? Because then at that point, there might be a lot more grace for when you're going through something, right? Because then it's out of the norm, right? So, but I love it. The gratitude journal. I absolutely love that. And thank you for sharing that with us. I think people can actually take a couple pages out of your book for that. Um, so when it comes to, you know, where you're going, your journey. You've been through a lot of different things in your life, right? Um, now we've had I've asked you to speak to the people, I've asked you to speak to the men. Now I want you to speak specifically to mothers,
Okay.
um, or new mothers, or who are embarking on the journey. They're pregnant, they're about to be new mother, or they are new mothers now. Um, can you speak to them a second on postpartum best practices, advice, right? Anything that you can give them um, for encouragement.
Okay. Um, Anything that you've been through or anything that you're about to be through, you are so much more and you are stronger than you know. You can get through this whether you feel alone or even have a village. Like you are so much more. I encourage anyone to dive into spirituality because whatever that may be for you as a person, that will never change. It cannot be touched, it cannot be broken. Just like the bond between a mother and a child can never be broken. I don't have the best relationship with my mom, but guess what? I still think about her a lot. And it's
Mm,
probably the most important relationship I have, even though it's not 100%. Um, my whole life, you can never break it. And don't let anybody tell you or make you think that they can affect that relationship with your child. Um, if you are struggling with anything, find an OB that you can really trust and be honest with because they can't help you if you're not honest and follow the recommendations. Um, Also, I would say it is important to protect yourself. If you're not in the ideal relationship um, and you think it may not work out, protect yourself. Maybe even do a little research on the side on what to do with paternity and custody and parenting time. I mean, I know it's like you have enough going on your plate being pregnant or having a baby, but this is real things to think about. Some people are like, oh yeah, I'll be fine. Life happens. It doesn't always, it's not always Disneyland fairy tale, right? Um, I'm still dealing with a lot of that stuff today, but I'm stronger than I know. I'm still here. I'm still doing it. Do all the things like get the apps where your baby's a different vegetable or fruit each month. The size of is what I'm referring to. I got the what to expect when expecting. Um, don't be so hard on yourself. Your body's going to change, but some come back, some don't, but it is worth every second of it. Loved being pregnant, but I wasn't I was on bed rest for most of mine. Um, if you can't work or you have to rest, this is such a time to enjoy your baby, your unborn child, and take care of yourself. Maybe even get to know yourself more again. What you like, what you don't like. Um, rest, rest. um, and yeah, just again, you are stronger than you know, and you are so much more. I know a lot of attention is going to be on baby. You're still important too. So get the help you need. It's not all about your baby. I will argue that it kind of is, but it's not. Um, because that whole, I don't know if you haven't heard the story, oxygen on a plane. So if you're on a plane and you're there with a kid, are you going to give oxygen mask to the kid? No, you put it on yourself first so that you can better help your child. I mean, I get chills when I talk about that because it's just so real, and I did not know that for a long time prior to being pregnant. But it's so important to I hate the saying like "do you," but in this moment, it's a "do you." um, but in all the healthy ways. Uh,
right. I appreciate that. Thank you for that. Well, I know there's somebody out there that is going to take those things and to heart as they're going through this, and then they're not alone. There are people who have gone through this, women that have gone through this that have made it successfully. And so before we get out of here, tell our listeners how they can get in touch with you, how they can book your services, and how they can contact you.
awesome. So my website is called hummingbody.com. and it has my contact information on there, phone number. I do have a Facebook page. It's so startup, and it's social media is not my favorite, but I am on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and yeah, I do give free consults. So if you just want to learn more or learn about for someone else, or just see what it's like, I'm more than happy to speak with you and meet with you virtually or in person. And I look forward to meeting you.
Absolutely, Miss Brianna. Well, I appreciate you for having this conversation with me. For our listeners, you've dropped a lot of gems and a lot of knowledge on this topic and some other topics that is super important when it ties into postpartum and when it just ties into humanity. I just want to thank you for the work that you're doing, and thank you for your passion towards this particular subject. And everybody, her information, of course, will right there below. All of her links that you can book her, view what she's doing, check her out, contact her. Mom life, right? Mom life, love that. And I just want to thank you again for your vulnerability and thank you for everything that you're doing. And thank you for doing this show. I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And I think this was such a needed series, and thank you so much.
Absolutely. And this has been another episode of Conversations of the Heart, series dedicated towards postpartum, and we will see you next week. Peace.